I couldn't breathe. The corridor outside the scholarship committee office spun around me, as if the entire university building had been placed inside a washing machine. My phone was vibrating nonstop. Unknown numbers, faculty members, the scholarship office, even the dean's secretary. None of it mattered anymore. At the end of the corridor, two security officers were speaking to a woman from the financial aid department. Every few seconds, someone glanced toward me, not with sympathy, with suspicion, as if I were already guilty. "You should come with us, Mr. Lin." The security officer's voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm people used when they'd already made up their minds. I looked past him, through the glass wall, into the interview room. My cousin, Zhao Kai, was standing beside the scholarship committee table. He looked terrified, but when our eyes met, something else flashed across his face. Relief. For a single second, relief. Because he thought the plan had worked. Because he thought I was about to take the fall. Again, the committee chairwoman held up a folder. My signature was forged. The room fell silent. A second later, every eye turned toward me. I wanted to explain. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that I had spent 3 years preparing for this scholarship. That every recommendation letter had been earned. That every grade had been real. That every document in my application had been genuine until someone switched them. But nobody listened. Nobody had listened to my previous life, either. The evidence was perfect. The forged documents had been found in my file. The security footage had mysteriously disappeared. And Zhao Kai, my cousin, my roommate, the person I had trusted more than my own brother, he stood there pretending to be shocked, pretending to be betrayed, pretending to support me. Just like before, my knees felt weak. The dean spoke. The committee chairwoman spoke. The security officer spoke. The words blended together. Fraud, forgery, investigation, disqualification, permanent record, future consequences. Every sentence felt like another nail driven into a coffin. My future, my career, my life, destroyed in less than 10 minutes. And the worst part? I knew exactly what happened. I knew who did it, but I couldn't prove any of it. The scholarship investigation ruined everything. The university expelled me. My internship offer vanished. My reputation followed me everywhere. Years later, after working temporary jobs and carrying a stain I could never wash away, I finally learned the truth. Zhao Kai had switched my documents. Not because he needed the scholarship. Not because he hated me. Because he was jealous. That was all. Jealousy. 3 years of suffering because of jealousy. The memory burned through me even now. The rain. The truck headlights. The sound of brakes. The impact. And then, darkness. A sharp ring exploded beside my ear. I opened my eyes. My chest rose violently. Air rushed into my lungs. I sat upright. Sweat covered my forehead. For several seconds, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. A narrow dormitory room. 2 desks. A pile of textbooks. A cheap electric fan. Morning sunlight. My gaze slowly moved toward the calendar hanging on the wall. Then I froze. Interview day. Scholarship committee interview. 3 years earlier. My heartbeat stopped. No. I grabbed my phone. The date was real. The time was real. Everything was real. My hands trembled. I rushed to the bathroom mirror. The reflection staring back at me was 21 years old. Not 30. Not broken. Not exhausted. Not defeated. 21. Alive. I stared at myself for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because I was happy. Because I couldn't believe it. Somehow, I had returned. Returned to the day that destroyed my life. The day everything began. The bathroom door opened. "Why are you acting weird?" A familiar voice. I looked up and saw Zhao Kai. Young. Smiling. Carefree. Alive. The same face. The same eyes. The same person who had buried my future. My fingers tightened around the sink. For one dangerous moment, I wanted to hit him. To grab him by the collar. To demand answers. To expose everything before it happened. But I forced myself to stay still. Because I remembered something. The first time, I had no evidence. And right now, I still had none. If I accused him now, nobody would believe me. They would think I'd lost my mind. Zhao Kai yawned. Nervous about the interview? I looked at him. His expression was perfect. Completely natural. as if he hadn't already planned everything, as if he wasn't carrying forged documents somewhere in this room. "I'll be fine," I said. He grinned. "Good. You deserve it." The words almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded and watched him leave. The door closed. My expression disappeared. I immediately began searching. Drawers, cabinets, bags, bookshelves, every place I could think of. Nothing. Of course. He wasn't stupid. If he had hidden the forged documents, they wouldn't be easy to find. An hour later, I sat on my bed, thinking. The first life had taught me something painful. The truth alone wasn't enough. Evidence mattered. Timing mattered. And desperate people made mistakes. The interview wasn't until afternoon. That gave me time. Not to stop him. To understand him. There was a difference. A massive difference. Because this time, I wasn't trying to save everyone. I was trying to save myself. The university campus looked exactly the same. Students rushed between buildings. Professors carried stacks of papers. The coffee shop near the library was crowded. Life moved normally. Only I knew how fragile everything was. I walked into the library. Not because I needed to study. Because I remembered something from my previous life. A small detail. One that had seemed meaningless back then. The scholarship applications were stored temporarily in a records office beside the interview rooms. Applicants couldn't access it, but student assistants could. And Zhao Kai worked part-time for the administration department. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now, the memory felt different. I spent the morning watching, waiting, observing. At 11:30, Zhao Kai appeared. He wasn't supposed to be in this building. Yet there he was, walking toward the administration wing. Alone, I followed from distance. He checked his phone repeatedly. Nervous. Much more nervous than he had appeared in the dormitory. Interesting. He disappeared through a side entrance. 10 minutes later, another student came out. A student assistant carrying files. The two exchanged a glance. Nothing obvious. Nothing illegal. But enough to make me suspicious. The old me would have confronted them. Demanded explanations. Forced action. The new me simply memorized everything. Every movement. Every expression. Every detail. By noon, I knew one thing. Something was already in motion. And for the first time, I wasn't standing in front of the train trying to stop it. I was standing beside the tracks, watching. At 1 o'clock, my phone rang. My aunt, Zhao Kai's mother. I almost declined. Then I answered. Xiaofeng. Her cheerful voice instantly transported me back years. Back to family dinners. Back to birthdays. Back to the countless times I had trusted her. Yes, Aunt. You and Kai are both interviewing today, right? Yes. I'm praying for both of you. Both. The word stung. Because in my previous life, after everything happened, she never once asked if I was innocent. Not once. She chose her son immediately. Everyone did. Thank you, I said quietly. You've always been the responsible one, she continued. Take care of Kai if he gets nervous. I closed my eyes. There it was. The role I had always played. The responsible one. The reliable one. The problem solver. The person expected to carry everyone else. Even now, even before the disaster, the expectation was already there. Take care of him. Protect him. Help him. Save him. I looked across the campus. Students walked beneath the trees. A warm wind moved through the branches. For the first time in years, I felt strangely calm. No. There was silence. What? I said no. My aunt laughed nervously. What do you mean? I mean he's an adult. Another silence. Longer this time. He can take care of himself. The conversation ended awkwardly. But when I hung up, something inside me felt lighter. A tiny thing. A simple thing. Yet it mattered. Because I'd spent my entire first life carrying responsibilities that weren't mine. Not anymore. The interview building stood at the center of campus. Tall. Modern. Impressive. The kind of place students dreamed of entering. Hundreds applied. Only one received the full scholarship. And in my previous life, it had become the place where my future died. I arrived 40 minutes early. Candidates waited in the lobby. Some reviewed notes. Some practiced answers. Some stared nervously at the floor. I sat quietly, watching, listening, thinking. Then Zhao Kai arrived. He spotted me immediately. Brother. The familiar nickname. I hated it. He sat beside me. You look relaxed. I am. He laughed. I wish I could be. His acting was excellent. Even knowing the truth, I could barely see cracks, which made one question impossible to ignore. How long had he planned this? Weeks? Months? Years? Had the jealousy existed all along? Had every smile been fake? The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. A committee assistant emerged from the hallway. Applicants, please prepare your identification documents. The moment she said those words, I noticed it. A flash of tension. Just for a second. Zhao Kai's shoulders stiffened, then relaxed. Interesting. Very interesting. The assistant continued checking names. People stood, opened folders, presented documents. Everything looked normal, but I knew better. Somewhere nearby, the trap was waiting. The first life taught me how this day ended. The second life would teach me why. And this time, I wasn't going to sacrifice myself to protect the people who never valued that sacrifice. The people who expect endless sacrifice are often the ones who value it least. I looked toward the interview room doors. My expression remained calm, but inside I made a promise. This time I won't do it again. The first interview candidate entered at 1:30. The waiting area grew quieter with every passing minute. No one wanted to admit it, but everyone was nervous, including me. Not because of the interview, because I knew disaster was approaching. The difference was that this time I wasn't standing directly in its path. I sat near the window and watched students come and go. Outside, sunlight reflected off the glass buildings across campus. Inside, tension slowly thickened the air. Zhao Kai kept checking his phone. That bothered me. In my previous life, I hadn't paid attention. Now I noticed everything. Every glance, every small movement, every nervous habit. His phone vibrated again. He looked down, read a message, then immediately locked the screen. A few seconds later he stood. I'm going to the restroom. I nodded. Nothing more. He hesitated, almost as if he expected me to ask questions. When I didn't, he walked away. The moment he disappeared around the corner, I stood as well. Not following directly, just moving toward the water dispenser nearby. From there, I had a partial view of the hallway leading toward the administrative offices. Zhao Kai never reached the restroom. Instead, he turned into a restricted corridor. My eyes narrowed. There, again, the same area near record storage. The same place connected to scholarship files. The same place I had seen him visit earlier. My pulse quickened. The old me would have charged after him, demanded answers, forced a confrontation. But I remained where I was, watching, learning, waiting. 10 minutes later, he returned. His expression had completely changed. Whatever anxiety had haunted him earlier was gone. Now he looked confident, satisfied, as if something important had already been completed. He sat beside me. Where did you go? He asked casually. Water. He laughed. You looked serious. I was thinking about the scholarship. I met his eyes. No. For a moment, something flickered across his face. A crack. Tiny. Gone almost instantly. Then he smiled. Don't worry. You'll do great. I almost admired how effortlessly he lied. Almost. The interviews continued. Candidates entered one by one. Some emerged smiling. Others looked devastated. Hours passed. Eventually an assistant called my name. Lin Xiaofeng. I stood. The room became silent. A strange feeling washed over me. In my previous life, this moment had represented hope. Everything I had worked for. Everything I wanted. Today it felt different. Now it felt like a crossroads. I entered the interview room. 5 committee members sat behind a long table. The chairwoman, Professor Liang, occupied the center seat. She looked exactly as I remembered. Sharp eyes, precise posture, the kind of person who noticed details others missed. At least usually. Please sit. I thanked her and sat. The interview began. Questions came quickly. Academic goals, research plans, community work, future ambitions. Unlike the previous life, I wasn't overwhelmed. I'd already lived through this once. I knew every question, every concern, every hidden evaluation. My answers flowed naturally. Several committee members exchanged impressed glances. Professor Liang nodded more than once. By the end, I knew I had performed well. Better than before. Far better. As I stood to leave, Professor Liang smiled. Excellent interview. Thank you. You should be proud of your work. A strange ache touched my chest, because I remembered what came next. The praise, the optimism, the future, then the collapse. I left the room. Outside, Zhao Kai immediately approached. How was it? Fine. Just fine. It was an interview. He laughed. You really are calm. No, I wasn't calm. I was exhausted. There was a difference. The interviews ended near evening. Candidates slowly departed. Faculty members moved between offices carrying files. Everything looked normal, exactly as it had before, which meant the explosion would happen soon. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Can we talk? No name, just a number. A second message arrived. Library rooftop. 10 minutes. I stared at the screen. A memory surfaced. The student assistant. The one I had seen leaving the administration office earlier. I remembered his face now. Chunwei. Second-year student. Administrative assistant. Quiet. Forgettable. In my previous life, he had testified during the investigation. Claimed he had seen nothing unusual. At the time, I believed him. Now I wasn't so sure. I headed toward the library. The rooftop was nearly empty. Only one person stood near the railing. Chunwei. He looked nervous. Very nervous. When he saw me approaching, he swallowed. Lin Xiaofeng. You wanted to talk? Yes. The wind carried sounds from the campus below. Students laughing. Traffic in the distance. Normal life continuing while something dangerous unfolded beneath it. Chunwei rubbed his palms together, then looked directly at me. I need to ask something. Go ahead. Why didn't you stop him? My heart skipped a beat. There it was. The first real crack in the story. I kept my expression neutral. Stop who? His eyes widened. For a moment, he seemed unsure whether to continue. He took a deep breath. Your cousin. Silence. Neither of us moved. Finally, I asked, what exactly are you talking about? He stared at me, searching my face, looking for something. Eventually, he shook his head. You really don't know. The words landed heavily, because suddenly I understood. Chunwei wasn't part of the scheme. He had witnessed something important, but he assumed I already knew. Interesting. Very interesting. What did you see? I asked quietly. He looked toward the rooftop entrance, as if afraid someone might appear. Then back at me. This morning, my pulse accelerated. I was working in records. He paused. I saw Zhao Kai enter. I said nothing. Chunwei continued. He wasn't authorized. What happened? He had another student assistant with him. The same student. The one I had noticed earlier. Everything clicked together. He accessed scholarship files. My jaw tightened. Did you report it? Chunwei laughed bitterly. You think students like me report things? Fair point. Administrative assistants occupied the lowest level of university hierarchy. Reporting misconduct often created more problems than it solved. I didn't know what he was doing, Chunwei said. Then why contact me now? His expression darkened. Because after he left, something bothered me. What? I checked the records log. The wind seemed colder suddenly. And he accessed your application. There it was. Confirmation. Not proof, but confirmation. My stomach twisted. Even after living through this once, hearing it spoken aloud felt different. Real. Concrete. Dangerously close. Chunwei watched my reaction. You honestly didn't know? No. His face paled. For several seconds, he remained silent. Then he whispered. Then something bad is about to happen. The investigation began less than an hour later. Exactly as before. Only this time I saw the first domino fall. A faculty member rushed into the administrative wing. Another followed. Then security personnel. Phones started ringing. Staff members hurried through hallways. Something had been discovered. I stood outside the building entrance watching. My chest felt tight. The old fear returned. The memory of being accused. Humiliated. Destroyed. A part of me wanted to run. Another part wanted to storm inside. To reveal everything. To demand justice. But I remained where I was. Because I had learned something during my first life. People rarely believe warnings. They believe evidence. And evidence was finally beginning to move. My phone rang. Zhao Kai. I answered. Where are you? His voice sounded strained. Outside. Come to the administration building. I looked at security officers entering through the front doors. What? Silence. Then, something happened. Of course it did. What happened? I asked. His breathing grew heavier. I don't know. Lie. I just need you here. Another lie. Then a third. Please. The word surprised me. Not because of the request. Because of the fear hidden underneath it. For the first time all day, Zhao Kai sounded afraid. Actually afraid. I remembered something then. In my previous life, when the investigation exploded, Zhao Kai had always remained calm. Too calm. Now I understood why. Because the original plan expected me to be trapped. Expected me to panic. Expected me to become the target. But something was different this time. Something had gone wrong. And Zhao Kai knew it. Interesting. Very interesting. Xiaofeng. I looked toward the building entrance. Security officers continued moving inside. Faculty members whispered nervously. A storm was forming. And for once, I wasn't standing at the center. I'll come. I ended the call. Then remained exactly where I was. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. I didn't move. Eventually my phone rang again. And again. And again. 12 missed calls. Then 17. Then 21. Each one from Zhao Kai. Each one carrying a little more desperation. I watched the screen silently. For years, I had rushed whenever someone needed me. Family. Friends. Classmates. Teachers. Everyone. I solved problems. Protected people. Absorbed consequences. Carried burdens. And where had that led? A ruined life. A lonely death. A truck's headlights in a rain. No more. Every act of rescue teaches someone they never need to save themselves. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked away. That evening, my aunt arrived on campus. So did my uncle. So did 2 university administrators. By then, rumors had spread everywhere. Scholarship fraud, forged documents, unauthorized access, potential criminal investigation. Students gathered in groups discussing theories. Social media exploded. No one knew details. Everyone had opinions. I sat alone near a quiet courtyard when my phone rang again. This time was my uncle. I answered. Where are you? His voice was sharp, angry, demanding. Campus. We've been looking for you. I looked at the darkening sky. And we need you here. The same assumption. The same expectation. Come fix things. Come save us. Come take responsibility. Even now, especially now, I felt tired. Very tired. What happened? I asked. A long silence followed. Then, Zhao Kai says someone framed him. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. The story was already changing. The lies were adapting. The trap was searching for a new victim. But something told me the next move wouldn't be so easy. Because this time there were witnesses. This time there were records. This time there were questions. And somewhere inside the administration building, a truth that had stayed hidden in my previous life was beginning to surface. A truth that would change everything. My uncle spoke again. Come immediately. I stood slowly. The courtyard lights flickered on around me. Night settled across the university. And for the first time, I felt the future shifting. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to hear the first crack forming beneath the foundation of a lie. A lie that had survived in my first life. A lie that might not survive in this one. I looked toward the administration building in the distance, then started walking, not to save anyone, not to protect anyone, only to watch what happened next. Ahead of me, emergency lights reflected against the glass walls. And inside that building waited a truth far worse than document fraud. A truth Zhao Kai had spent years hiding. One that was finally ready to emerge. The administration building was brighter than usual. Almost every office light on the 2nd and 3rd floors remained on despite the late hour. Faculty members moved through hallways carrying folders. Security personnel stood near entrances. Students gathered outside in clusters, pretending not to stare while staring anyway. The atmosphere reminded me of a hospital waiting room. Everyone knew something serious had happened. Nobody knew exactly what. I entered through the main doors. Immediately, several heads turned. The reaction was subtle, but I noticed it. In my previous life, this had been the moment people started looking at me differently. As a suspect, as a disappointment, as someone whose future had just collapsed. This time their expressions were uncertain, confused. That alone told me something had changed. A secretary approached. Lin Xiaofeng. Yes. Professor Liang would like to speak with you. Interesting. In my previous life, security officers had spoken with me first, not Professor Liang. The differences were beginning to multiply. I followed her upstairs. Every step felt strangely familiar. The same corridor, the same offices, the same smell of paper and coffee. Yet everything felt different, because this time I wasn't walking toward my destruction. I was walking toward the truth. Professor Liang sat alone inside a conference room. Several folders rested on the table. A laptop sat open beside them. When I entered, she gestured toward a chair. "Please sit," I obeyed. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then she folded her hands. "How are you feeling?" The question surprised me. In my previous life, nobody had asked. Not once. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." A faint smile appeared on her face. Not unfriendly, just observant. I looked away briefly. "Something happened." "Yes." She nodded. "Something happened." Silence settled between us. Then she opened one of the folders. My application. I recognized it instantly. Every page, every document, every recommendation letter. My chest tightened. Professor Liang slid it across the table. "Please review this." I opened it. The contents looked normal. Academic records, certificates, personal statement. Nothing unusual. Nothing forged. Nothing altered. My eyes widened. That wasn't possible. In my previous life, forged documents had been found inside my file. Those forged documents had destroyed me. But now, they weren't there. Professor Liang carefully watched my reaction. "What do you notice?" I forced myself to remain calm. "Everything looks normal." "Exactly." Her eyes sharpened. "Everything looks normal." The repetition carried meaning. She knew more than she was saying. Far more. "What happened?" I asked. Professor Liang leaned back. "The investigation is ongoing." Not an answer. "Then what can you tell me?" She considered the question. "Finally, someone attempted to access scholarship records illegally." My pulse quickened. "Who?" "I cannot disclose that." "Of course. Official procedures, university policy, legal concerns." Still, her wording mattered. Someone attempted, not someone succeeded. Another difference. Another crack in the old timeline. Professor Liang tapped the folder. "When we reviewed all applications this evening, we discovered irregularities." I listened carefully. "The irregularities were not inside your file." A chill moved through me. "Then where?" My silence seemed to encourage her. She continued. "They were found in a duplicate storage archive." I frowned. Duplicate archive? That hadn't happened before. Or perhaps it had. Maybe nobody investigated deeply enough the first time. Maybe the truth had always existed, buried beneath assumptions. Professor Liang closed the folder. "Mr. Lin." "Yes." "Has anyone recently asked for access to your documents?" The question landed heavily. She wasn't fishing. She already suspected something. I chose my words carefully. "No." "Has anyone shown unusual interest in your application?" A face immediately appeared in my mind. Zhao Kai. But accusations without proof would accomplish nothing. "Not directly." Professor Liang nodded, as if she expected that answer. Then she said something unexpected. "Good." I blinked. "Good?" She stood, gathered several folders, then paused near the door. Sometimes the truth reveals itself fastest when nobody interferes. Our eyes met. For a brief moment, I wondered if she somehow knew everything. Not the rebirth, not my previous life, but perhaps she understood human nature better than most. Perhaps she had already recognized the shape of the lie. Without another word, she left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. And one disturbing realization. The investigation was much larger than I remembered. I found Zhao Kai an hour later. Or rather, he found me. I was standing near a vending machine when he appeared from the far end of the hallway. The moment I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him. Not physically, emotionally. His confidence was gone. His easy smile had vanished. His clothes looked disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot. Fear had finally caught up with him. "Xiaofeng." His voice cracked. I stared quietly. For years, I had imagined this moment. Confrontation. Truth. Confession. Instead, I felt mostly tired. "What happened?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. The sound was strained. "You know something's wrong. I know there's an investigation." His jaw tightened. That's all. What else would I know? For a second, I thought he might lose control. His expression twisted, then settled. No. He shook his head. Nothing. Lie. Another lie. The problem was that his lies were becoming worse. Messier. Desperate. Fear was affecting him. Good. Fear made people careless. He stepped closer. We've always trusted each other, right? There it was. The real conversation. Not facts. Not evidence. Manipulation. I remembered countless moments from my first life. Every favor. Every sacrifice. Every time I protected him. Every time he took it for granted. We're family, he continued. The word family. People often use it as a key. A way to unlock obligations. A way to demand forgiveness without earning it. I remained silent. His discomfort grew. Finally, he lowered his voice. If something happens, I waited. If people ask questions, I waited. If anyone says strange things, and there it was. Not a request. Not yet. A test. He was measuring me, checking whether I remained the same person, the same loyal cousin, the same reliable shield. Unfortunately for him, that version of me had died under truck headlights years ago. I met his gaze. If someone asked me questions, I'll answer honestly. The color drained from his face. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough to tell me everything. His breathing changed. His eyes flickered. For the first time all evening, genuine panic appeared. Then someone called his name from down the hallway. A university administrator. Zhao Kai turned. Relief flashed briefly across his face. An escape. He seized it immediately. I have to go. Without waiting for my response, he walked away. Fast. Too fast. I watched him disappear around a corner. Then I quietly exhaled. Because now I knew. He was afraid of the truth. Not the investigation. Not the university. The truth. The next morning began with rumors. By noon, the rumors had evolved into theories. By afternoon, they became accusations. The university's internal message boards exploded with discussion. Students speculated endlessly. Some believed a scholarship applicant had committed fraud. Others thought administrators were involved. A few claimed corruption. Nobody possessed facts. Only fragments. And fragments were dangerous. I sat in the library, scrolling through posts. Most were nonsense. One wasn't. A photograph. Blurry. Taken from a hallway security camera screenshot. My attention immediately sharpened. The image showed two student assistants entering a restricted records office. One was difficult to identify. The other wasn't. Zhao Kai. The post disappeared 10 minutes later. Deleted. But not before hundreds of students had seen it. Interesting. Very interesting. Someone else was pushing back. Someone else knew something. My phone vibrated. Chunwei. Meet me. Urgent. The library rooftop was becoming familiar. When I arrived, Chunwei looked worse than before. Exhausted. Anxious. Angry. Most importantly, determined. He handed me a flash drive. I stared at it. What is this? Insurance. Against what? His laugh contained no humor. Against powerful people, deciding the truth is inconvenient. A bad sign. Very bad. What happened? Chunwei looked toward the city skyline. For several moments, he remained silent. Then, they tried to make me change my statement. My stomach tightened. Ooh, I don't know. That answer bothered me. Someone from administration? Maybe. He rubbed his forehead. They didn't threaten me directly, but they suggested remembering things differently. There it was. The oldest trick in the world. No threats. No orders. Just pressure. Subtle pressure. The kind difficult to prove. The kind institutions loved. What did you tell them? His eyes met mine. The truth. A strange warmth touched my chest. Not because of loyalty. Because honesty had become rare. Very rare. Especially around this investigation. Chunwei pointed at the flash drive. Everything I copied is there. My heart skipped. Everything? What exactly did you copy? Access records. I froze. Access records. Not rumors. Not opinions. Evidence. Real evidence. The kind that destroyed lies. The kind that changed lives. The logs weren't erased in time. His voice dropped lower. I think someone expected the system backup to fail. My mind raced. If true, that explained everything. The original plan. The confidence. The forged documents. Someone had expected evidence to disappear. Just like it had in my first life. Except now something had gone wrong. A backup survived. A witness noticed. A timeline shifted. Fate itself seemed to be resisting the old outcome. Chunwei looked uneasy. I don't want this. Then why keep fighting? His answer came immediately. Because he already knew. Because innocent people shouldn't pay for other people's lies. For a moment I couldn't speak. Not because of the words. Because years ago I would have said exactly the same thing. Back before life taught me how expensive innocence could be. That evening, another surprise arrived. An email. Official. University address. Mandatory attendance requested. Scholarship Investigation Review Committee. Tomorrow morning. My name. Zhao Kai's name. Several administrators. 2 student assistants. Professor Liang. I read the message 3 times. Then slowly closed my laptop. The real battle was beginning. Not emotional. Not physical. A battle of facts. Evidence. Truth. And for the first time since returning to this day, I felt genuinely uncertain. Because evidence didn't only reveal villains. Sometimes it revealed things nobody expected. Things nobody wanted. The flash drive sat on my desk. Silent. Small. Dangerous. I stared at it for a long time. Then another memory surfaced. A forgotten conversation from my previous life. One sentence. One strange sentence. Spoken by Zhao Kai during the worst period of the investigation. You think this was only about the scholarship? At the time I hadn't understood. Now the memory returned with terrifying clarity. Only about the scholarship. Only. The word echoed inside my head, meaning there had been something else. Something bigger. Something hidden. A secret buried beneath the fraud. My pulse accelerated, and suddenly I realized the most important truth of all. Zhao Kai had never been acting like a man protecting a scholarship. He was acting like a man protecting something far more valuable. Something worth destroying another person's future for. Something worth risking prison for. Something worth lying about for years. The realization settled heavily inside me. Tomorrow's review meeting wouldn't merely expose fraud. It would expose motive. And motives often reveal the ugliest parts of a person. I looked out the dormitory window. Campus lights stretched across the darkness. Quiet. Peaceful. Deceptively normal. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, Zhao Kai was almost certainly panicking. Trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. Trying to control a story that no longer belonged to him. Trying to stop consequences already in motion. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing. I finally understood that now. Because every instinct urged me to intervene. To expose. To accuse. To fight. Instead, I simply watched. And tomorrow, the truth would begin speaking for itself. I barely slept. Not because I was afraid. Because anticipation was harder to endure than fear. Fear had direction. Anticipation did not. It stretched endlessly through the night, filling every quiet moment with possibilities. By 7:30 the next morning, the university campus already felt different. Students whispered when certain names were mentioned. Faculty members spoke in lowered voices. Rumors had become impossible to contain. The scholarship scandal was no longer private. It was becoming public. And public scandals developed lives of their own. I entered the administration building at 8. The conference room occupied the entire corner of the second floor. Large windows, long table, neutral gray walls. The kind of room designed for professionalism. The kind of room where careers quietly ended. Several people had already arrived. Professor Liang, 2 committee members, the university legal advisor, 3 administrators, Chen Wei, the second student assistant, and Zhao Kai. The moment our eyes met, I saw it. He hadn't slept either. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled. His expression carried the exhausted tension of someone fighting a battle he knew he was losing. For a second, resentment stirred inside me. Not because of what he looked like, because of memory. Because years ago, I had sat in a room almost identical to this one. Terrified, desperate, alone. And Zhao Kai had watched. Silent. The irony wasn't lost on me. Professor Liang gestured toward an empty chair. Please sit. I obeyed. The room gradually filled. Then the doors closed. The review began. Nobody spoke immediately. The silence itself felt deliberate. Heavy. Measured. Professional. Finally, the university legal advisor opened a folder. We will review the findings collected during the scholarship investigation. His tone was calm. Emotionless. The kind of voice used when facts mattered more than feelings. We ask everyone present to answer honestly. He looked around the table, one by one, then settled briefly on Zhao Kai. The message was obvious. The legal advisor continued. Unauthorized access occurred within the scholarship records department. A projector illuminated the wall. Access logs appeared. Dates. Times, entry records, digital signatures. The evidence looked simple, yet devastating. Professor Liang folded her hands. Mr. Zhao. Zhao Kai stiffened. Yes. Can you explain why your credentials were used to access restricted scholarship files? The room became perfectly still. The question landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Everyone waited. Zhao Kai swallowed, then forced a smile. There must be a mistake. No surprise there. Denial was expected. Professor Liang nodded. As part of the investigation, we considered that possibility. Another document appeared. Backup system records. Cross-reference timestamps. Verification reports. The legal advisor spoke. The credentials were authenticated through multiple systems. Silence. No one interrupted. No one rushed him. The evidence simply existed. And evidence possessed a certain cruelty. It didn't argue. It didn't negotiate. It just remained. Zhao Kai's smile weakened. I don't remember accessing those files. The legal advisor wrote something down. Professor Liang exchanged a glance with another administrator. Then Shen Wei was asked to speak. I watched carefully, because this moment had never happened in my first life. Shen Wei sat upright. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady. He described everything. The unauthorized visit, the restricted records room, the timeline, the access logs, the conversations. Nothing dramatic, nothing exaggerated, just facts, one after another. Each fact tightened the pressure inside the room. Several administrators took notes. Others reviewed printed reports. Meanwhile, Zhao Kai grew paler. Not dramatically, gradually, like someone realizing a bridge behind him had disappeared. The second student assistant was questioned next. Unlike Shen Wei, he looked terrified. Sweat covered his forehead. His answers were inconsistent, nervous, contradictory, and eventually the contradictions became impossible to ignore. Professor Liang leaned forward. Mr. Su, the student assistant flinched. Your statement yesterday differs from today's statement. He looked trapped, because he was. The legal advisor placed two documents side by side. Yesterday's statement, today's statement. The differences were obvious, painfully obvious. Professor Liang spoke again. Would you like to explain? The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then the student assistant broke. Not emotionally. Practically. Like a dam developing its first crack. Zhao Kai asked me for help. Every person in the room became still. Even breathing seemed quieter. The student assistant lowered his head. He said it wasn't serious. His voice shook. He said he only wanted to review another applicant's file. The room exploded with questions. Not shouting. Professional questions, which are somehow worse. Precise. Focused. Relentless. Who? When? Why? What was exchanged? What happened afterward? Each answer pulled another thread loose. And eventually the fabric began unraveling. For the first time, Zhao Kai lost control. He's lying. His voice echoed across the conference room. Several heads turned. Not shocked. Interested. Because panic had finally entered the conversation. The legal advisor raised a hand. Please remain calm. He's lying. Zhao Kai repeated it. Louder. More desperate. Professor Liang's gaze hardened. Then explain the evidence. Silence. For several seconds he couldn't. Because explanations require facts. And facts were running out. I sat quietly, watching, listening, doing exactly what I promised myself. Nothing. Years ago, I would have jumped into this situation. Tried to help. Tried to fix. Tried to protect. Today I simply observed. And the more I observed, the more I noticed something strange. Something nobody else seemed focused on. The scholarship itself. Nobody was talking about motive. Only actions. Only access. Only procedure. Yet Zhao Kai's fear still felt too large. Too intense. Too desperate. People committed stupid acts for money. For opportunity. For envy. But this felt different. There was another layer somewhere. I could feel it. The same way someone feels a hidden crack beneath fresh paint. The surface looked complete. The damage underneath remained concealed. For now, the answer arrived unexpectedly. The legal advisor requested financial records. At first, I didn't understand why. Then a document appeared on the projector screen. And everything changed. The room became silent again. Not investigative silence. Shock. Pure shock. Several administrators stared at the screen. Professor Liang's expression froze. Chunwei blinked repeatedly. Even Zhao Kai looked stunned, which meant he hadn't expected this evidence to appear either. Interesting. Very interesting. The legal advisor adjusted his glasses. These records were discovered during a broader audit. Audit, not scholarship review. Broader audit. Suddenly the pieces shifted. A different puzzle emerged. The screen displayed transaction histories, account transfers, payment records, university grant funds, unauthorized withdrawals. My heartbeat accelerated. This wasn't scholarship fraud. Not entirely. It was financial fraud. The room remained silent. The legal advisor continued. Over the past 18 months, multiple grant accounts experienced irregular transfers. My stomach tightened. 18 months. Long before the scholarship. Long before the interview. Long before any of this. Professor Liang slowly looked toward Zhao Kai. Not because he transferred the money. Because his access records connected directly to the administrative department. And suddenly I understood. The scholarship wasn't the real crime. It was a cover. A distraction. A way to redirect attention. The realization struck me with physical force. The old memory surfaced instantly. You think this was only about the scholarship? Now I finally understood. The investigation accelerated. Questions changed. Evidence changed. The room's atmosphere changed. What had begun as academic misconduct was becoming something far more serious. University auditors joined the meeting. Financial officers arrived. Additional records appeared. And with every new document, the same names surfaced repeatedly. One administrator, one assistant, and eventually, one student, Zhao Kai. Not because he stole money, because he helped conceal access, helped manipulate records, helped move information. At some point, his jealousy toward me had merged with another opportunity. Someone approached him. Someone offered benefits. Someone discovered a useful fool. And Zhao Kai accepted. The scholarship scheme wasn't merely revenge. It was insurance. If scrutiny ever arrived, attention would focus on me. Not elsewhere. Not upward. Not toward the financial records. Toward me. The scholarship candidate. The convenient target. The disposable sacrifice. The realization settled inside my chest. Strangely, it hurt less than expected. Maybe because I had already lived through the consequences. Maybe because the anger had burned itself away years ago. Or maybe because I was finally seeing reality clearly. Not as a victim. Not as a hero. Just as a person who had been used. Around noon, the meeting paused. People left to gather additional materials. Others made calls. The investigation had grown beyond the university's internal authority. External auditors were being contacted. Potential criminal review was being discussed. The words themselves felt surreal. Criminal review. Years ago, those words had hovered over me. Now, they hovered elsewhere. I stood near the conference room window. Below, students crossed campus pathways, completely unaware of how many lives were changing above them. The door opened. Zhao Kai entered. Alone. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he laughed quietly. Not from amusement. Exhaustion. You knew. I looked at him. No. You knew something. His eyes were bloodshot. Desperate. Searching. I shook my head. I didn't know. That was true. I knew pieces. Not this. Not the money. Not the broader fraud. Not the depth of it. Zhao Kai stared out the window. Then spoke again. They were supposed to erase everything. The words escaped before he could stop them. The moment he realized it, his face changed. Too late. I said nothing. He laughed bitterly. Again. You know what's funny? No. I never wanted any of this. His voice sounded hollow. Broken. But not innocent. Never innocent. People often imagine villains enjoying wrongdoing. Most didn't. Most simply justified it until consequences arrived. Then they regretted outcomes. Not choices. A subtle difference. An important one. You could have stopped me. The accusation surprised me. I looked at him carefully. No. Yes. He turned toward me. Anger replacing fear. You knew something was wrong. I understood then. He wasn't seeking truth. He was seeking responsibility. Someone else's responsibility. anyone else's, because accepting his own was unbearable. I held his gaze and quietly answered, "No, Zhao Kai." The room felt smaller suddenly, quieter. He could have stopped you. I pointed toward his reflection in the window. You. For the first time, he had no response. The investigation resumed that afternoon, and by evening the outcome had become inevitable. Suspensions, administrative reviews, financial audits, external reporting. Everything moved forward, not because anyone sought revenge, because facts demanded action. Truth does not create damage. It reveals where damage already exists. As I left the building, evening sunlight stretched across campus. The air felt lighter, not because everything was finished, because everything hidden was finally visible. Behind me, the machinery of consequences continued turning, slowly, relentlessly, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't trapped beneath it. I was finally standing outside, watching, while the collapse became unavoidable. The investigation did not end with a dramatic arrest. Real life rarely worked that way. There were no handcuffs in hallways, no television cameras, no crowds gathering to witness justice. Instead, consequences arrived through meetings, reports, audits, emails, signed documents, quiet decisions made behind closed doors. Yet those decisions changed lives far more thoroughly than any public spectacle could. 3 days after the review meeting, the university released an official statement. Unauthorized access to scholarship records had been confirmed. Multiple administrative violations had been identified. A broader financial investigation remained ongoing. Names were not publicly released, but everyone already knew. Universities function like small cities. Secrets traveled faster than facts. By lunchtime, most students had heard some version of the story. By evening, nearly everyone had. And for once, my name was not attached to the scandal. That still felt strange. I sat alone beneath a row of trees near the engineering building, reading the announcement for the 4th time. Not because I doubted it, because part of me still expected disaster. Expected someone to appear and accuse me. Expected the old timeline to reassert itself. Trauma had its own memory. It lingered long after circumstances changed. A shadow cast by events that no longer existed. My phone vibrated. Professor Liang. I answered immediately. "Professor, do you have time to meet?" "Of course." "Good. My office." She ended the call. Direct as always. Professor Liang's office overlooked the western side of campus. Books lined every wall. Research papers occupied nearly every available surface. The room looked less like an office and more like a battlefield where knowledge had won. She gestured toward a chair. I sat. For several moments, she reviewed documents without speaking. Then she removed a folder from her desk. The scholarship file. My scholarship file. A familiar knot formed in my stomach. Professor Liang noticed. "You still react to it?" I smiled faintly. "I think I always will." She nodded, as though she understood. Perhaps she did. Not the rebirth. Not the previous life. But she understood damage. People who spent decades guiding students often learn to recognize scars. Some visible, others hidden. She opened the folder, then slid a document across the desk. I stared. For several seconds I couldn't process what I was seeing. Scholarship award confirmation. My name. Official approval. University seal. Everything. I looked up. Professor Liang smiled slightly. "Congratulations." The room became strangely quiet. Not externally. Internally. As if part of my mind had stopped moving. Years. An entire lifetime. Pain. Failure. Regret. All connected to this moment. This scholarship. This opportunity. This future. In my first life, it had been taken away. Now it sat quietly on a desk. Waiting. "You're not saying anything." Professor Liang's voice gently pulled me back. I laughed softly. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't." Her smile widened. Some moments don't require words. I looked down at the document again, then carefully placed my hand on the paper, just to make sure it was real. That evening I walked across campus without any destination. No goal. No schedule. No urgency. For the first time since returning to this day, I allowed myself to breathe. Actually breathe. The city beyond the university glowed beneath the approaching sunset. Students laughed outside cafes. Cyclists crossed campus roads. Someone played guitar near the student center. Life continued. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Beautiful. And suddenly I realized something strange. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not even a little. For years I had imagined confronting Zhao Kai. exposing him, humiliating him, making him suffer exactly as I had suffered. Yet now, none of those fantasies mattered. The truth had already appeared. The consequences were already moving. Nothing I did could improve that. Nothing I did needed to, because revenge and healing were not the same thing. I had confused them once. Not anymore. The following week brought another unexpected development. Chunwei found me outside the library. This time he looked different, relaxed, less burdened, as though a weight had finally left his shoulders. You look better. He laughed. So do you. Fair. We sat beneath a nearby tree. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Comfortable silence. Rare. Valuable. Eventually, he handed me a bottle of tea. I accepted it. Thank you. No problem. Another silence. Then, he said. I almost stayed quiet. I looked at him. What changed? He stared toward the library entrance. People passed through constantly. Students carrying books. Professors carrying papers. Normal lives. Normal worries. Normal futures. I kept imagining what would happen if nobody said anything. His voice remained calm. But someone always pays when people stay silent. The words lingered. Because he was right. Someone always paid. The difference was deciding who. The innocent or the guilty. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about investigations. Not about fraud. Not about scandals. Just life. Classes. Careers. Future plans. Normal things. And somehow those ordinary conversations felt more important than all the dramatic confrontations that came before. Maybe because they represented something new. A future not defined by the past. The financial investigation expanded rapidly. Additional administrators resigned. Audits uncovered years of misconduct. Not enormous corruption. Not enough to become national news. But enough to damage reputations. Enough to end careers. Enough to matter. Several people attempted to minimize their involvement. Others cooperated. Some disappeared entirely. Human nature revealed itself in predictable ways. Meanwhile, Zhao Kai remained suspended pending further review. I heard updates occasionally, mostly through rumors. Some true, some false. I didn't chase information. I didn't need to. Every path eventually led toward the same destination. Consequences. One afternoon, nearly 2 weeks after the review meeting, my aunt called. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Then I did. The silence on the line lasted several seconds. Long enough to feel uncomfortable. Finally she spoke. You haven't visited. Not hello. Not how are you. Not congratulations. Just accusation disguised as disappointment. Something's never changed. I've been busy. Another silence. Then, your cousin is struggling. There was the real reason for the call. Not concern. Expectation. The old role returning once again. Save him. Help him. Fix it. I closed my eyes briefly. Years ago, those words would have worked. Not anymore. What do you want me to do? My aunt immediately answered. Talk to him. Simple. Direct. Familiar. The request itself wasn't unreasonable. The assumption behind it was. Because hidden beneath her words was an old belief. That responsibility naturally flowed toward me. That if something broke, I should repair it. Even when I wasn't the one who caused the damage. I looked out the dormitory window. Students crossed the courtyard below. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the pavement. Aunt, my voice remained calm. Some problems belong to the person who created them. The silence that followed felt enormous. Then hurt entered her voice. He's family. Yes. Doesn't that matter? I thought carefully before answering. Because family did matter. It mattered a great deal. Which was exactly why betrayal hurt so much. Family matters, I said quietly. But accountability matters too. She didn't know how to respond. Eventually the call ended. Not angrily. Not peacefully. Just unfinished. And perhaps some conversations were destined to remain unfinished. That night I sat alone in my dorm room. The same room where everything began. The same room where I woke up after returning. The same room where Zhao Kai once lived. His side remained empty now. Most of his belongings had already been removed. Only faint marks remained. A missing poster, a scratch on the desk, a forgotten pen beneath a shelf. Small traces of a person. Nothing more. I stared at the empty space for a long time. Searching for hatred. Searching for anger. Searching for anything. What I found instead was exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. The kind created by carrying old pain too long. And suddenly I understood something. The opposite of revenge wasn't forgiveness. It was indifference. Not cruel indifference. Peaceful indifference. The moment someone stopped occupying space inside your mind. The moment their choices became their burden instead of yours. That realization felt surprisingly freeing. Peace begins when winning stops mattering. The thought arrived quietly. It settled deeply. Because for the first time, I genuinely understood it. Near midnight, an email arrived. A research opportunity connected to the scholarship program. International collaboration. Graduate pathways. Long-term mentorship. Possibilities. Real possibilities. The kind I never received in my first life. I read every line carefully, then twice more. Not because I doubted it, because hope still felt unfamiliar. Returning to the day of the interview had given me a second chance. But perhaps that second chance was larger than I initially believed. Maybe it wasn't only about avoiding disaster. Maybe it was about building something better, something meaningful, something lasting. For years I had focused on what was taken. Now, for the first time, I found myself thinking about what could be created. The difference felt enormous. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the window. I listened for a while, then opened the scholarship confirmation again. Not to admire it, to remind myself it existed. To remind myself that this future was real, that this life was real, that I no longer needed to live inside old wounds. Somewhere in the city, investigations continued. Reports continued. Consequences continued. But for the first time, none of those things require my attention. I had my own future now, and that future was finally beginning. The rain continued through the night. By morning, the campus looked washed clean. Water collected along walkways. Trees glistened beneath pale sunlight. Students hurried between buildings, carrying umbrellas. Life moved forward, as it always did, no matter how dramatic yesterday felt, no matter how painful, no matter how important. Life kept moving. I stood beside the window of my dorm room and watched the rainwater slide down the glass. For several minutes, I simply listened. The quiet felt different now. Not empty, peaceful. A month had passed since the investigation. The university had completed most of its internal reviews. The scholarship program had resumed. The research partnership had officially accepted me. Classes continued. Projects continued. My future continued. And somehow, after 2 lifetimes of carrying the weight of one disastrous day, I finally felt something close to freedom. Then my phone vibrated. The message came from an unfamiliar number. Only one sentence. "Can we talk?" I stared at it. No name. No explanation. Yet I immediately knew who it was. Zhao Kai. Some instinct survived every lifetime. I looked at the screen for a long moment, then typed a simple reply. "Where?" The response arrived instantly, almost as if he had been waiting. "Old sports field." I put away the phone, not because I wanted answers, not because I wanted closure, but because some stories eventually required an ending, and endings deserve to be faced directly. The old sports field sat on the edge of campus. Years ago, it had been crowded. Now most students used newer facilities. The place remained quiet, almost forgotten. The sky had cleared by the time I arrived. Clouds drifted slowly overhead. The grass still carried traces of rain. Zhao Kai stood near the bleachers, hands in his pockets, head lowered. When he saw me approaching, he straightened. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt strangely familiar. Not hostile, not friendly, simply honest. The kind of silence that appears when there is nothing left to hide. "You came." His voice sounded tired. I said I would. He nodded, then looked away. The confidence that once defined him was completely gone. Not destroyed, just stripped away, like paint removed from old wood. What remained underneath looked smaller, more human, more flawed. We stood there for several moments. Eventually he laughed quietly. A sad sound. "You know, I kept rehearsing this conversation." I said nothing. I thought maybe I'd explain everything. His eyes drifted toward the empty field. Maybe justify it. Another pause. Maybe blame someone. The honesty surprised me. Not because he admitted it, because he recognized it. That was new. Very new. "What changed?" I asked. He smiled weakly. I ran out of lies. The answer settled between us. Simple. Painful. True. The wind moved softly across the field. Zhao Kai remained silent for a while, then finally spoke. It started with jealousy. No surprise. I had known that part for years. Still, hearing him admit it felt different. Everyone compared us. His voice remained calm. Teachers. He laughed bitterly. Family. Another laugh. Even strangers. His eyes lowered. You always worked harder. I remembered those comparisons. Not because I enjoyed them, because I hated them. Comparisons poison relationships. Parents believed they motivated children. Most of the time, they simply planted resentment. I told myself it didn't matter. He kicked a loose stone. It mattered. The stone bounced twice before stopping. I kept waiting to catch up. He looked toward me. Then eventually I stopped trying to catch up. His expression tightened and started wanting you to fall behind. The honesty hurt more than excuses would have, because excuses created distance. Truth created understanding, and understanding was often uncomfortable. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The field remained quiet. Only distant campus sounds drifted through the air. Then Zhao Kai continued. The scholarship wasn't supposed to become this. His voice had grown softer. The financial stuff started first. There it was. The missing piece. The final piece. I got involved because it seemed harmless. He laughed again. The sound held no humor. That's how stupid decisions usually begin. I couldn't disagree. People rarely walked directly into disaster. They drifted. One compromise, then another, until turning back felt impossible. I thought I could help. His jaw tightened. Then I thought I could benefit. His eyes closed briefly. Then I thought I could escape. When he opened them again, there was nothing left inside except exhaustion. And eventually I realized I was trapped. The field fell silent once more. A strange sadness touched me. Not sympathy. Not exactly. Just recognition. A recognition that most tragedies didn't begin with monsters. They began with weaknesses. Weaknesses ignored too long. Weaknesses protected from consequences. Weaknesses allowed to grow. You blamed me. The words left my mouth before I consciously decided to speak them. Zhao Kai froze, then slowly nodded. Yes. No denial. No argument. Just honesty. I blamed you because it was easier. The admission hurt less than expected. Perhaps because I already knew. Perhaps because I no longer needed him to say otherwise. You could have stopped me. He looked toward the empty bleachers. I kept telling myself that. His voice became almost a whisper. Because if you could have stopped me, then maybe it wasn't entirely my fault. The words hung heavily in the air. There it was. The truth beneath everything. Not the fraud. Not the jealousy. Not the scholarship. Responsibility. The thing people fear most. Not punishment. Responsibility. Because punishment eventually ended. Responsibility remained. I looked at him quietly, then answered. No one could have stopped you. His shoulders trembled slightly. Not from anger. From understanding. The painful kind. The unavoidable kind. The kind that arrives when excuses finally collapse. The conversation lasted another hour. Not because there was much left to say. Because some silences required time. Eventually, Zhao Kai asked, "Do you hate me?" The question sounded almost childish, yet completely sincere. I considered it carefully, long enough that he began looking nervous. Then I shook my head. No. His eyes widened slightly. I continued. I hated what happened. The memories surfaced briefly. The accusation. The ruined future. The lonely years. The rain. The truck. The darkness. All of it. I hated the consequences. My voice remained steady. I hated the person I became afterward. A long pause. But I don't hate you. The answer surprised even me. Not because it was false. Because it was true. At some point along the way, hatred had simply disappeared. Without permission. Without ceremony. Without effort. It had left. And I hadn't noticed. The sun began lowering toward the horizon. Golden light stretched across the empty field. The day was ending. So was the conversation. Zhao Kai stood quietly, then extended his hand. Not confidently, not hopefully, just honestly. For a moment I looked at it, then shook it. The gesture didn't erase the past. Nothing could. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement. Two people standing at the end of a story, recognizing reality. Nothing more. Nothing less. When we released our hands, he nodded once. Goodbye, Xiaofeng. Goodbye. Then he turned and walked away. I watched until he disappeared beyond the far gate. This time I didn't follow. Some journeys belong to the people taking them. 2 years later, I stood inside a research laboratory overlooking a different city. A different life. Large windows framed a skyline I once believed I would never see. Graduate studies had become research opportunities. Research opportunities had become professional opportunities. The future continued expanding. One step at a time. No miracles. No shortcuts. Just steady progress. The kind built through ordinary days. My desk contained project reports, research papers, conference invitations. The work was meaningful. The people around me were good. Not perfect. Good. And that was enough. A framed scholarship certificate rested near the corner of the desk. Most visitors ignored it. I didn't, because every now and then I glanced at it and remembered. Not the fraud, not the betrayal, not the investigation. The choice. The choice that changed everything. The choice to stop carrying people who refuse to carry themselves. The choice to step aside. The choice to let truth speak. The choice to live differently. A younger researcher entered the office. Professor Lin? I smiled. The title still felt strange. Yes. We're ready for the presentation. I stood, gathered my notes, then followed him toward the conference room. Outside the windows, sunlight reflected from neighboring buildings. Bright, warm, alive. Halfway to the door, I paused briefly. Not because of regret, because of gratitude. The second chance was never about changing them. It was about changing me. I smiled, then continued forward, toward the future. And this time, I didn't look back.